All right, backed out on me. On now, you think? Okay, 73 people texting me. If that thing happens and you're watching it, you tell me, I'll try to do something on it. We can do you out. But since I'm teach class and I sometimes miss off a chance that it won't happen, so that's give you the numbers. Travis and Steve. Steve's not here, Joel's not here, Travis is here, so as well. But that's a good question, Connie, and I'll have to. I looked this up before, but for some reason, my missaying is the same person at all. Potiphar. All right. On the 7th month of years, the ground forth abundantly, 47. So he gathered up the food of the 70 which were in the land, and laid up the food cities. He lit up in every food of the fields around them. Gathered very much grain, sand of the sea, and he stocked for it was immeasurable. So he gathers it up. Now the question people ask, did the government just confiscate this grain? Something in this story tells me they did not confiscate the grain. Bought it up. We do petroleum reserve that we set aside for emergencies. You had the government and other people, and then they were able to, when time came, sold it back to the people. So, you say both ways. But it was a 20% fee. Now, that's so much that this probably didn't cause a problem. Because there was so much grain, he couldn't even measure all of it. But he built these large areas, and apparently all this grain in them for that time. And to Joseph born 2 sons for the years of famine, whom Anath, the daughter of Potiphar, the priest, on board him. She called the name of the foreign Manasseh. God has made me for all my toil in my father's house, that Manasseh is forgetting. So this is made the problems of his youth. All things that him having the children, having sons, so forth. The name of the second Ephraim, for God caused it to be fruit land of my affliction. Ephraim means fruit. These 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Now this is significant on several counts. To find out, if you don't already know, these 2 sons of Joseph, each portion of the land in it. Joseph gets 2 portions. He gets none, essentially, as tribal territory, and Joseph gets portions. And they aren't small portions either. These are the largest 2 tribes physically in Israel, as I know. God, and in fact, the whole country, once the kingdom splits after Solomon's, the whole northern kingdom and tribes are all called Ephraim by people. So these 2 sons, half Egyptian, mother was an Egyptian, become 2 most plentiful tribes in this. Okay. The hair comes. So this is, I think just been a lot of understanding over years in what I was taught up somewhat, and I don't mean that in a critical way, but I kind of, I taught by good people, knowledgeable people, but I think there was a little understanding, and it's going across Christian denominations general. The Old Testament is misunderstood in that the idea, in the Old Testament, God was a vengeful God, but he's a nice God in the Testament. That isn't true. And things like all the Levites could never be someone who wasn't a Jew. It's not true. They were forbidden to marry the Canaanite women, not necessarily Egyptians, people like that, okay, and other foreigners. And there are several non-Israelite within the lineage of Christ that have to deal with. Now, what this means to me is that God preserved a lineage, Abraham, that's based on physical lineage, but it was also more important based on faith. Faith of those descendants. Some of those people have faith and some of them have faith. And secondly, even its lineage that said, I'm going to separate the Jews, he was including the Gentiles in that. God always intended to save all people, all the Gentiles. He would save everybody, not just Jews. The idea that I grew with hearing people teach is that in the Old Testament, after the law was given, only the Jews were saved. Everybody was lost. I think the Bible says that. It teaches that disobedient people were lost. People were not Jews. If they kept God had given them, they could be saved. They didn't, they'd be lost. Just like Jews. Do you think the Jews kept the Moses? They did not keep the Moses. They were no better than the Gentiles. God gave the Gentiles the natural law and keep it. Moses. God used his own law, the 10,000 beautiful things of his law. It says, I believe it's Mike. And they keep it. So God intended to say Jew and Gentile. Here's Joseph, Egypt. He has two sons by a pagan priestess, and they become largest kings of the tribe in Israel when they did the land 400 years. So it's interesting, isn't it? I got some of our conception a little bit off that. It's like us doing this Passover. There's look, I'm expecting pushback on this, and it's okay if you don't agree with that, but I'm just saying there's this feeling among Christians that the Passover is a bad thing. The Day of Atonement, a bad thing. It's just like keeping pagan feast. It's not anything like keeping a pagan feast. God gave Passover. He told the Jews, but there's nothing Passover that's wrong to do or wrong to look. Not even a meal. As you know that meal of Christ, it's not wrong. God gave it. Keep it to be saved. But that's not the same as keeping it to the Saturn or whatever, one of the pagans. Not the same. But yet we have this, it's Jewish, anti-Christian. How can be Jewish be anti-Christian? Christ is a Jew. All the apostles were Jews. Have the Jewish people, since of Christ, been against Christ? The word he has. Yes. But the things of the Jews and Israel are not against God. They're not. God gave them. And he holds them as accountable as you for all that he gave you. Jews today without Christ are lost. The Gentiles without Christ are lost. Christ came to save all of those people. So I'm on a rant. You might be shaking her head. I could probably shaking her head in the classroom. You know why she's shaking her head, but she is. Yes, Mike, you're on her. But, ma'am. Okay. Laura, I can't hear you. I am sorry. Your fault is my fault. Speak up. I don't have my hearing broken. Yeah. Yes. I think And that's a good, I didn't go and elaborate. He's speaking there to the people who grew up as Jews keeping the various custom, the old law. Can't keep on doing that. Yes. As long as they understand that that's all been fulfilled in Christ. Christ is the end of the law to believe. Were the Gentiles required to do things, to circumcise children and to keep no, they weren't. And so what you have, and I think, is a situation where he's telling these Jews to be a Jew at that time, even today, means to keep Passover. I know Jews, atheists, sit down at a Passover meal every year. Their family, even though they believe a word of all that, because why do that? Because they're Jews. What Jews do as a people. We blend together. We say Jew in religion, but they're ethnicity or person. And so Paul was to the Jews there about holidays. There's nothing wrong with circumcising your children or eating a Passover meal or what else you want to do. If you don't have Christ there, you're lost, because there's no salvation outside of that. The Gentiles, are they required to do that? Be teaching you to pass over and circumcise your children? No, because you're Gentile. And but we still have respect. The problem is have disrespect for what you did about those things, or not even care knowing what's going on. I think missing a lot. Don't do that. So when we do our little Passover, we're not keeping the Passover. The truth is, I'll say that. We're not keeping the Passover. We're demonstrating how it's done so you can understand it. One of the main points of the cross is that the Passover is not the Lord's Supper. People, is the Lord's Supper, is the Lord's Supper. We're going to look at that later on. I'll talk about that later. In any event, I don't know if that answers your question, but it's perfectly okay for those Jews to go on circumcising children. Would they tell the Gentiles to circumcise their children? No. Perfect. Well, they shouldn't have been worshiping a false god at any time. When you keep the Passover, you're not worshiping a false god. When you keep the feast to Savona or whatever, I think of Apollo or something, you're worshiping a false god. Now, could they go to market and meat that have been sacrificed to those gods? I said no. Yes, they could go do that as long as their conscience didn't say, when you do that, you're being Apollo. As long as they could make that distinction that I'm going to do this meat, even though it's been off Apollo, I don't care about that. He's not really a god. I eat that meat. As soon as they began to, oh no, that was offered idol, and I didn't do that. And there were some people who were like that. They voted. All the people were just like all of us. Some of them were devoted, some of them weren't devoted. Is America quote a Christian nation? Kind of. Are people devoted to Christ here? Okay. Some are. Some people are really, really devoted. I knew a fellow was raised a very devout Roman Catholic. He just wouldn't have anything at all to do with Christ at all, because he had thought all the symbols were, everything about it, something to do with some saint or something like that. And he had to throw all in mind, he had to throw all that away, Christian. That's okay. I didn't argue about that. That's what the book's talking about those Jews, those kids who couldn't eat meat. He was the one that couldn't eat the meat. Other people were raised around Christian saints, as if they knew anything about it. They ate the meat because they're worshiping God time, or a false god. They were just doing what their family. You make that distinction. Yes. Family, my mother was a Roman Catholic, had a bad background. My mother, she'd bring her danger scene to the house. My mother would get upset at all this stuff. We were taught kids, Christmas, not the birthday of Christ. We get presents because family, we love to do that. All that kind of stuff. And so we had a Christmas tree and we presents, so forth. There are some people who become Christians, though. Now, by the way, We didn't have a star on top of our Christmas tree, angels on the Christmas tree, because the religious said we didn't do that. Oh, we were being the tree gods, Norway. I don't know. I can name. I don't know. I can't even name them. Anyway, the point is, some people can make that distinction. Some people can't. Some people can. The Jews, though, when they became a Christian, had a son, and had a choice. They never could make a choice. They circumcised that son on the 8th day. At the time of Christ, in the Christian period, most Jews would never give it a second thought. That son had circumcised on the 8th day because he's a Jew. Were they still the law of Moses? Oh, no, they weren't, but they were. I mean, what do we think well, I shouldn't have said, because I think we've had, what would we think of an American president who wouldn't salute the flag? Or doesn't like to sing the Star-Spangled Banner with his hand over his heart? What would we think of American? We doubt that they're American when they do that kind of stuff. Is that not what happened years ago? And people doubt that he's American? He wouldn't do those kinds properly? Yes. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm saying that's the same thing with you having your son circumcised and having a Seder meal meant you're Jewish. It did. They kept the whole of Moses, or even religious, to being Jewish. We blend those two. We blend that stuff together. And so, no indication here that Joseph began to worship the gods of Egypt. We have no indication that he gave up being Jehovah. His wife was an Egyptian. Now, Ahab, led history, who made a Philistine or a Sidon woman, Jezebel. God told him not to do that. He did anyway. What happened to Ahab? Well, his wife led him astray. He began to worship false gods. We have no indication that Joseph did this. So think carefully about this business about the Jewish feast. I think it's important to have knowledge of things. Some of the things learn about the Jews are customs that they had. They're not law, they're customs that they had or tradition. There are good reasons for them all, but, got to distinguish, are they keeping what the law says, or are they just making stuff up? A lot of stuff then tells me, for example, you're listening, Ken? Yeah. A lot of stuff tell me it's interesting, and but since it's just what they make up, it isn't what the text is. Not because you tell me. This is the problem. You say, well, what Christians believe about this, that? Be the answer to that most of the time. Well, it ends on what? The Christians almost anything. The question, what does the text? Now then, I'll credit most of the customs. They were at least trying to figure out what the text said and do something about it. A lot of them were. It's probably true of a denominational systems. People were, a good way, trying something they thought was right. Well, that doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean they just make up what we do about what we should about the text, holiday, where there isn't, and call it a right thing. So it's the same thing. Now, if you went into something really controversial, talk about what the churches of Christ do in the same way of taking things that are not in the text and making them part of the text. So, you don't think that's right, what I just said? Huh?
The church that Christmas for church of Christ.
That's true, and they shouldn't have. They should not do that.
They had all the demons, kids and stuff like that. And it really was a mess. It really was. Never saw anything. Even the cats were that bad. It really
Yeah. Once you leave the idea of let's just stay with text as simply as we can, leave that, you can go the direction you want to. That's the problem. And it makes a very bones kind of religion. The other kind is you like. Comes a religion that you like. But we have some that, we have had an elder try to tell, sure serious about it, that Jews, if Lord's Son had to be red Jews, be from white grapes, because red was the color of the blood. White grape juice wouldn't be scriptural. Sound good, but what's the text say? What's the text say about it? It says fruit of the vine. Now, can prove 100% certain they didn't have white in Israel at any time in history. No, you can't prove. I think you can. So now it's fine. It's a story about a guy that did the Lord's Son, where this was, but had they're going to give thanks to the bread, to the lid off bread. Sister made it out whole wheat flour brown. He looked at that. Oh my goodness! Not white crackers. Because skin is white, so it has to be white crackers. Oh, now look, if the bun has to be red, color does the bread to be? You see, I can go a lot of places with this. I go a lot of places with this. But he went, oh my God, maybe it's okay. He didn't ask it all out, and he thought to himself, at least that's okay. Now let's lift the lid off that white grape juice. But nothing wrong with either one. There's nothing wrong with either one. Should you just shut up all the time to but careful what you don't understand what the text says that you're supposed to do. The first time ever was at dinner of the table, young man. I'd watched my whole life. I was a young man, put me at the center, nurse, barely could talk, and I passed the fruit of the vine. Or tried to. Stop me, and I had to say a prayer again. It's over again. Does that matter? It doesn't matter. The text said they took bread, they took fruit of the vine. When Paul recalls how it was done in 1 Corinthians 15, gives you the order. And so now I read to myself, I'm in that position. You always eat before you drink. Put the food in first, then sip to wash it. That's what I remember. Got to wash it down, put the bread in first, wash it down with the drink. That's how I remember. There's a better way, but well, that's how I remember. But just those two things. Where were we? We're on Joe's children. It's fascinating. These two half Egyptians, big cabs. The 7 years of plenty in the land of Egypt ended, and 7 years of famine began, as Joseph has said. Why would there be famine? Well, there ain't any rains. The river may have dropped. Something happened, they can get the rain. If they don't get rain in southern Africa, they water in the Nile. When any rains in the west and Minnesota and Illinois, New Orleans becomes a dry place. Takes a little time, that's what happens. And so there's two reasons why this happened. Probably rain doesn't much in Egypt, but it rains in central and southern Africa, and that didn't happen. And so the 70 famine began to come. Joseph had said, it was in all the land. But in the land of Egypt, there was bread. This tells more than just the river drying up. This famine across all Palestine, too. The weather changed and getting rain. When all the land of Egypt was famished and cried to Pharaoh, then fed to all the Egyptians, Joseph, whatever he said, you do it. And was over all of the earth, and Joseph, all the storehouse sold to the Egyptian. The famine became here in the land of Egypt. So all the fish came to Joseph, Egypt, to buy gain. The famine was severe, all the lands out. Just because they had grain to eat, mean that things were good. They'll really hurt. Feed your livestock. And there's no grass, rain, a lot of. So they were having trouble, but they were starving to death. And so when Jacob said it was grain in Egypt, Jacob said, why do you look at weather? Why do you sit around looking at what we're going to do? He said, indeed, I have heard there's grain in Egypt. Go down to that place for us there. We may live and not die. So Joseph's brothers went down to grain in Egypt. But Jacob didn't send Joseph's brother Benjamin with him, brothers, that lest calamity befall him. Sons of Israel like grain among those journeyed, for them was in the land. And Joseph was governor of all the land, and he who sold all of the land. And Joseph's brother came and bowed down before him with their faces to earth. So they are in the crowd. Commentators say he's put himself in a position, especially to make foreigners. What's the stop with that big bell? Yeah. I apologize. I thought that was the first bell, waiting for the second one. We better stop right. I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to go bad. Look, my rant process. What's that?